everyone. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Yay. It's exciting when it's Friday. The weekend's coming. Sunday service will be here. It's going to be awesome. So, how many out there can say, how was your week? Awesome. That's right. It was an awesome week this week. And I do want to let you know, see, I brought some flowers from my gardens, make it a little bit more girly. Pastor's office, they have to leave once I'm done though, but it is there. And I do want you guys to know that if you start to see my hair flying a little bit, it's because I am extremely warm right now. So I brought in my own little personal fan. And so it's not your screen, it's not the video, it's the fan blowing in my face to keep me from just getting way too hot. So just to let you know that. Hi, Vivian. Hi, Darlene. I see you're on. And Marcia, I know that you're on because you've texted me. And I know Catherine's coming and Anna. So that's real great. When others come on, my IT person, Pastor, will be saying hello to you. So I thank you so much, guys, for showing up and being so faithful to the ladies' lessons. It really is an encouragement to me. And I thank you for that. Well, it is time that we get started, and today it's going to be just a little bit of a follow-up on a couple of the other lessons, but I think it's what the Lord truly wanted to discuss today. So let's just make sure that our hearts and minds are all clear of worldly and distractions, as in the dog barking again. And honey, can you take care of that? Thank you. And let's just move on to what we need to learn today. So, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a follow-up from last couple of lessons, and you'll see it throughout this lesson. It's amazing how the Lord works things out that way, and we can see it. And as I've told you before, Pastor and I never really talk about what we're going to teach one to another. I might have him, I'll run it through him to make sure that it sounds like it's flowing, but we never really talk about where we're going to be going. But it's amazing how the Lord works it out to where it always goes through. It always kind of matches up, and it's interesting. So, but today we are going to be talking about, the title of today is called Answer. You know me, I like those one-word titles. So that's the title, Answer. And when we were raising our children, I wanted to teach them how to answer when we talked with them. It's important that they would listen to us and learn the things that we are teaching, but also to answer when we called them. And sometimes, they would think, no, not right now, or when I think it's more appropriate, or when I think it's a good time to answer. That's not what we wanted out of them. We wanted them to answer when we called, without question. And the reasoning, excuse me, but I've got this one here that's driving me crazy. Okay, to answer right away. And a good example of that, and why I wanted my children to come when I called and to answer me, was one of our sons. I'll try not to mention his name, but it's a good lesson to learn. I will tell you that his name begins with J. Now, those of you that know us, we have 6 children, and 4 of them are with J's. So good luck in guessing. But we lived on a corner at this time, and on this corner, it was a residential street, but it was pretty like a major kind of side of a residential street in front of us. And so the kids were only supposed to be playing out back. Well, one day, this one individual child and one of his siblings thought it would be fun to toss the ball out front. We had a big yard, and on this big front yard, at the end of our yard before the street, there was this, gully or ditch. It was probably about 3 feet deep. Yeah, about that, 3 feet deep. And so anyway, they were tossing the ball back and forth, and I was in the living room folding clothes, and I had noticed that they were out front. And so I had thought, well, I'm going to wait and see if they realize that it's probably not too safe to be out there. And so they're tossing the ball back and forth, and the ball goes out into the street. And as I looked up, I see this toss that was missed and nicked on one of the child's glove, and it went out into the street. And I'm coming. And here, this is split second reactions. I jump up, I go to the front door, I start racing out the door, I start calling this child's name, and he's not paying attention. And he runs over into the ditch onto the street, and I can see this vehicle coming. And there is just no way I'm going to make it in time to this child. There's just no physical way. Yet I did. I don't know how. I know I was running fast. I can remember, kind of like jumping, like a big jump over the ditch, grabbing the child by the back of his shirt and just tossing him into this ditch. And as I tossed him, my body turned. And as I turned, the car had sideswiped my big derriere. And in I went into the ditch. And as I pick up this child, I don't even notice his sibling, but his sibling has run into the house. He already knows there's going to be trouble. And I picked up this child, and I did one of the motherly things that we do. And I disciplined him all the way into the house as I'm talking to him, telling him, you don't run into the street. What is the matter with you? And as we got into the house, I sat him down and I talked to him. Now, this particular child just never really listened. He heard when we spoke, but he never listened. And so it was always a struggle. You could call him a strong-willed child. I know I've heard that out there. I've read books on it. He wasn't that far out there. But anyhow, so I'm talking to him, and I'm telling him, don't you understand, when I call you and tell you to do something, you need to listen and to do it right away without question. And he's bawling, and it's a real cry. It had reached his heart. And he said to me, Mommy, that car hit you. And I told him, yes, but I'd rather have the car hit me than hit you. And this is the reason why when Mommy says, don't do something or get out or come to me, you need to do it without even thinking that I could grab that ball. I can do this first. I can do that first. But to answer me right away, because there is danger that you do not see. And what that brings to me is that this example is an example of us as Christians. That child is us. That mom is God. And when he calls us, we don't need to question him. We don't need to think at a better time. We don't need to try to think that, well, I can do this first or that first. But we need to answer ASAP, right away. Because God can see things in our lives that can be dangerous for us that we don't see, that we don't recognize. You tell your child, don't touch that stove, it's hot. That child, some of them will listen right away. And others will go, it's hot, let me try it. And you know what? And it burns and it hurts. And then the child will look at you like, that hurt. Well, yes, I told you. And that's the same thing with God. We have to trust his wisdom within our lives. There's a song that the children know. I think it's a Patch the Pirate song. It might be one that he just incorporated. It's the videos that are done for children. But it's called Obedience. And I taught it to the children. That if my daughter-in-laws are listening, they probably taught it to their children. You probably taught it to your children. If you don't have children, you've probably heard it somewhere else. But it's obedience is the very best way to show that you believe. Action is the key to obedience. See the joy you will receive. OBEDIENCE. Obedience is the very best way to show that you believe. It's very simple. And matter of fact, that song taught me how to spell obedience, by the way. I always had a problem with it before then. But we're going to go to Ephesians 6:1. We should all know this. If you're new, it'll be one that you will learn. We taught it to our children. It was important to us for that they would know this particular scripture. It was in the alphabets verses that we taught them. And it was for O, by the way. So Ephesians 6:1. says, oh, actually, I think it was for C, for children. Yeah, excuse me. But it was, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Now, we use that on our children when we're training them up. And we try to teach them that this, everything in the Bible is important. Memorize these verses. But we also need to see it as this is God talking to his children. And he's telling us as his children that we need to obey him in the Lord, of course, for this is right. So my question is that do we, as children of God, do you answer when God calls? We sit here and we learn ways that to listen to him. We know to be still, to be quiet, to wait on the Lord. But do we answer him when he calls? I believe that sometimes as Christians, we tend to hold off. Just as children, you'll call them to do their chores. Hey, come on, it's time to fold your clothes, or it's time to make your bed, or it's time to take the trash out to the kitchen. And they'll want to wait until they believe that it's appropriate, till they think it is more convenient for themselves. Do we do that as Christians for God? When God calls you, do you answer right away? Or do you wait and say, well, I don't think I'm gonna witness today. I'm not gonna share the gospel with somebody today because I just think it's probably maybe raining too much, or I'm just too scared. Or if you've been standing in line at a supermarket or a regular store, and you know that you need to give the gospel tract to someone next to you, or maybe someone in line, and you get too scared. No, they're working. I don't want to bother them. If God puts something on your heart, we need to answer. There are many times within your life, and it's not just sharing the gospel, but it's tasks that we do. Going to church. Right now we can't because of the closures. Hopefully they'll open soon, and we need to get everything ready before we can show up for church. But do you go? God tells us in his scripture that when the doors are open, we're to be there. If it's not convenient for you, are you being that child that doesn't listen to God? Or it's hard for you to get to church. Again, had 6 kids, had problems. I know it's a difficult task a lot of times to get there, but we need to be there. God's telling us this. If God tells us to do something for someone, do we wait until it's more convenient? We need to answer right away. There was a show that we were watching, and I think it's called Miracles or something like that. And it's stories in people's lives about how God did a miracle, or what they considered a miracle in their life. And there's this one that was very touching, and I thought this was an excellent example about answering when God tells you to. This gentleman was having a case of where he just could not sleep at night. It ended up being, it was a while, I think a week or so, but it was insomnia. He could not sleep. And it was he just could not do it anymore. And it was driving me a little nuts. So he thought, you know what, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk somewhere. And in his heart, he said, he had this urge to go to this pier. And so he gets up out of the sleep. He gets dressed, he goes out and walks, and it's a distance from his home, but he figures maybe a good long walk will help him to sleep. And so this was after many nights of just out walking around, but he said this urge of this pulling him to go to this pier. And so he followed that urge and he went to that pier. And he's standing there looking around, and there's like one other guy there, maybe a couple others, but the one guy that he really noticed. And this one gentleman was sitting there and he was fishing. So he goes over and he strikes up this conversation with him, and he's talking to him. Nothing scriptural, just regular stuff. And he finds out that through these talk and through this messages, that he tells the guy, hey, that he wasn't in that great of health. And he says, okay. And so they talk a little bit more. And it was a couple of times that he went there. But the gentleman that was there fishing tells him that he's going to be dying soon. And the gentleman said, well, may I ask why? And the fishing gentleman says, yeah, he says, I'm waiting for a kidney, but it does not look like I'm going to make it till I get a match. And so the gentleman goes, oh, I'm very sorry. Let me pray for you. And he goes home. So as he's going home, he's decided he starts looking up on the web about kidneys and problems and all this. And so finally he got the urge to go and see if he could be a match. He finds out the doctor's name of this particular guy from him, by the way. And he goes to that doctor and he talks to him about what his condition is and how long he has to live and everything. The doctor can't tell him too much, but he just tells him, it's true what the guy told you. He probably won't make it until he gets a donor. So the gentleman asks him, and he says, for this perfect stranger, he just had this strong urge. And he said, can we test me? And the doctor said, well, yeah, but you're not going to be a match. It's so far off. And the reasoning was because the gentleman that was fishing was of a different color than the gentleman that was there to try to get the match. And from what, the doctor told him, that's so far off to have a match. Usually it has to be a close relative or somebody from the same descendants, as yourself or the same ancestry. But long story short, he ends up matching a perfect match for this gentleman. He ends up donating his kidney to this guy that he met like a week earlier. Now, and the gentleman gets, everything works out. They're perfect match. They're great friends now. But it just goes to show you that God knew that this gentleman on the pier that was fishing, that was praying for a donor, and knew that this guy needed it. The gentleman that was out of an insomnia that went to the pier, he listened and he answered God, and he went to that pier and he talked to that gentleman. He didn't know that they would be perfect matches. And the God urged him again to go and get tested, even though the doctors said it is highly unlikely. There's just no way. God made a way. God foresaw. He saw, as in when I was dealing with my child, that car beforehand, where he had me look up, where he had me run out to there. He knew that car was coming. He knew that this gentleman needed a kidney. He just needed someone to answer. What a miraculous thing to be a part of. And God will give us these awesome chances if we just answer him. There's another story I want to tell you, and it's dear to my heart. God blessed me with being a answer and being a part of someone's answered prayer, and how important it is to answer God when he urges you. You ever have these feelings of urgency, of startling maybe, or a heavy burden about a person? I'm sure many of you have. But this particular feeling, this particular day, was extremely strong on my heart. And I'm not perfect. At first I thought, I'm not going to call that person. They're busy right now. But then I thought, no, answer God. And so, okay, I went and called this person. I let it ring. They didn't answer. Now, most would just say, okay, well, I'll call later. No, the urging became stronger upon my heart. Such a heavy burden. I just can't explain the intensity of this burden. And so I called again, let it ring until it went to the voicemail again. No answer. I did this 5 times within less than 3 minutes. It was the 5th time that the person picked up. They were agitated and they said, why are you calling me now? And I said, well, I'm sorry. I was just going to check in with you. The person said, no, why are you calling me now? Now, he asked that a couple of times. I finally said, God told me to call you and you didn't answer. And there was a Long pause. Well, it seemed like a long pause. It was probably maybe like 5 or 6 seconds, but it seemed long when you're on the other end. And the person says, I'll call you back in a minute. And I go, no, wait a minute. He says, no, I promise you I'll call you back. So I said, okay. A couple of minutes go by, and the person does call me back. And the person, I'm going to get emotional. The person is crying. And he said, I apologize for being rude to you earlier and harsh. But I want you to know that the reason I asked you this is because I was holding a gun to my head and I was going to kill myself. And I told God that he would have to stop me. And you kept calling. You wouldn't give up. You don't know what is out there and what other people, are dealing with. You can be part of that person's miracle, of their answered prayer. We have to answer God's calling, not when it's convenient for us, not when it's a better time. But as soon as God calls, you must answer. It could be someone's life in the balance. Now, I tell you this story not to shine light on me, but to shine light on God and how he watches after every single one of his children. Every single one of you is special to God. Every single one that God puts on your heart, there is a reason for it. They might be in that life struggle, or they might just be a little sad. But you could be an answer to prayer if you answer his call. Now, there might be something very small, and it might not seem big to you, but it can be enormous to that person, as in the gentleman meeting up with the fisherman, as in the person that I was calling. It was just a phone call to me, but to them, it was a life event for both of those people. But it's an important thing. Your call or your text to somebody could mean lifting that person's spirit. The card in the mail might encourage someone to continue on in the ministry of the Lord. But we must answer that call. Now everybody knows I love acronyms. And so here's one for you. It's DDSO. Okay? D as in dog, D as in dog, S as in Sam, O as in Oscar. And what that is don't doubt, step out. Got that one? Don't doubt, step out. Never doubt that God isn't calling you to tell someone that you love them, to answer of maybe just handing out a tract to someone, giving someone a loaf of bread. Don't doubt it. Step out. So in other words, we want to make sure that we answer right away. What if that gentleman that went to the pier waited one more night, or a week, or 2 weeks when it was more convenient? Maybe the guy that needed the kidney wouldn't be around anymore. What if I had waited an hour? What if I had waited 5 minutes? We don't see what's ahead. Only God can. But we can be a part of someone's miracle. Don't doubt. Step out. I want to bring you to 1 Samuel 3:4. 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 4. That the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, "Here am I." We all know that story where he was called, he kept hearing someone call his name. And he answered 3 times, and he ran into Eli, excuse me. Names are terrible for me. Eli. 3 times he goes into him. And he finally, I personally, if I got woken up 3 times in the middle of the morning, I'm not the happiest person around. And I'm sure Eli went, what? And he told him, go back. It's the Lord talking to you. And so the next time he was called, he answered, here am I. So he kept answering him, and he knew that God would call him his name. So Eli didn't quite know the Lord yet because he didn't understand the voice. He thought it was his master or his friend. And so he went to them. But his friend knew who it was and told him, go, it's God, answer the call. And he did it. So we need to make sure that we answer his call when he calls. We don't doubt, but step out. Answer right away. You may be the one that's used in someone's life, in someone's prayers, in someone's miracle, and you might never know it. Answer God's call. Thank you, ladies, for this Friday, and thank you for taking your time. I appreciate all of you and you listening and wanting to learn God's word. Don't doubt. Step out. Bye, everybody. Thank you.